What's that?
Oh. So that way I'm not.
Oh, sure, contagious, right, okay, sure. So welcome to this workshop of the Writing Center. I'm Michelle Reddy-Gannon. I want to invite you to come to the Writing Center for any of your writing assignments that you're working on. We can assist you. Encourage you to make an appointment if you can, rather than simply dropping in. We're crazily busy right now, so appointment's a good idea. The blue-gray sheet that is on the table provides you with our contact information, our hours, and answers to commonly asked questions about the Writing Center. And on the back side, instructions on scheduling an appointment online. The gold sheet has our list of remaining workshops. And so you'll see on the back side of this what's coming up next. Literary analysis doesn't have to be scary. Next Wednesday night, for those of you who might be taking a literature class either this semester or next, you might be interested in that. It's right on General Weekend Day. And then the next week, if punctuation is sort of one of your pet peeves issues, using commas and other punctuation, that's a brand new workshop that we're offering on the 7th of November. After that, how to write a portfolio introduction. Some of you may be getting ready to do that, especially if you're in a class like English 101. That's November 14th, right before Thanksgiving, week before. And then after Thanksgiving, you'll see the write-in, which is November 28th. And we would encourage you to come to that. That's a special event. It's you'll notice it's longer time period from 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock. And you can drop in anytime during those 4 hours and get help with your writing. We'll actually have half the room devoted to writing, where you can just come in and write. And the other half, there will be writing consultants on hand that you can talk to, get some help with your writing, get some feedback on what you've written. And we'll also have food and drink here, so take advantage of that if you can. Toward the end of this workshop, I'll distribute comment cards for those of you who want to notify an instructor. You can put your instructor's name on the comment card, and we'll do that. You can also get paw points. Just put your student ID number on the front of the comment card, and we'll make sure that we record those points and get those emailed to the proper person. And we have people online with us, so you'll want to keep whispering to a minimum. And so that you don't distract your neighbors around you, please put away your electronic devices unless you're specifically taking notes on them for this workshop. So please give our presenter, Dr. Prentice Clark, your complete attention. She has graciously volunteered to lead this workshop for us. Okay.
Yes, you're right. Hi guys, so revision strategies. I'm going to ask for your participation quite a few times throughout the workshop, and I'll sort of call you by table number, so table 2, 3, 4, and you guys are at 8 and somebody over at 9. Just before we start, I want to make sure that I address the specific things that you want to talk about. I have a lot here compiled to give to you, but I do want to make sure I address people individually. So when you are asked to revise a paper or you're struggling to revise a paper, what is the thing that you find most difficult? What is the thing that you struggle with? What would you like to be sure to talk about in tonight's workshop? Table 2, anything in particular that you really struggle with when you're revising?
For me, it'd be deciphering the difference between a thesis and your topic.
So the difference between a thesis statement and the topic, what it is, the subject that you're writing about. Hopefully we'll clear that up. Anything else from table 2, things in particular that you want to be sure we touch on? Table 3, things that you struggle with. Organization. Okay. Most effective way to organize your essay. Table 4, things in particular. Things that you hear back from your instructor that he or she always tells you to do.
maybe like go deeper into that concept? Kind of like, okay, like more, but more.
Okay, so expand on this, analyze further. How do you do that? Okay. Table 5, the one lone person at table 5 in the pink, down at the end. I don't know your name.
She realizes.
Yeah, I don't think she hears either. Table 9.
Just clarify.
Okay, so clarification also. And table 8, you guys, anything in particular? What does your instructor tell you often?
You want to say it or do you want me to? Okay, I can tell you what they struggle with. It's
Okay.
transitions, bridging ideas.
Okay, so transitions, table 8, how do you write effective transitions from one idea to the next? Anything from the online persons, things that they struggle with or that when revising?
Haven't seen anything yet.
Okay, they can chime in at any point. So just starting off at the beginning, the PowerPoint pretty much follows your handout except towards the end. I'll probably add some things too, so if you want to go along with the PowerPoint and your handout, you might want to add some notes too on your handout as we're moving along. Basic first step thing, I know it's a temptation to want to, when you revise a paper, to fix the small things first, like grammar. That can waste a lot of time. I would suggest breaking the revision process into 2 parts. So first begin by doing macro level revisions, so revising thesis, revising organization, then doing the micro level revisions. Remember that if you reorganize your whole essay, remember that if you maybe even develop another thesis statement, you might spend a lot of time revising sentence by sentence, but those sentences might not even make it into your final draft. So really think about, do the big level, macro, conceptual level revisions first, then move to the sort of technical level revisions. First big thing after keeping that in mind, do you understand your instructor's feedback? Comments, right? If not, schedule an appointment or stop by your instructor's office hours. I can't tell you enough, like for my end of things, right? It helps so much just to talk one-on-one to a person, right? So if you're not sure how to approach revising, if you don't really understand what your instructor is asking you to do, go talk to that person, right? Go talk to that instructor. It clears up a lot, and it also saves time, right? You're not struggling to figure out what is it that I should be focusing on when I'm revising. Sort of basic, but just a reminder. Second strategy, copy your entire rough draft, open a new Word document, and retitle it. Some students find it really helpful to put spaces in between each paragraph, so you can isolate and look at each paragraph one at a time, right? Every paragraph should have a focus, one main idea, one claim, right? And should be able to stand alone. So people, especially who are visual learners, right, you might find it helpful to create spaces, extra space between paragraphs. The rationale behind opening a new document, right? You saved your rough draft, you're not going to lose it, it's all there. It really frees you up to open a new document and start fresh, right? Maybe you want to totally reorganize your paragraphs, right? That's opening a new document allows you to do that. One of my students this semester also is a really sort of tactile learner. Like, she doesn't like to look at things written on a page. So I said, cut out all of your paragraphs, literally, physically cut out your paragraphs and move them around on your floor, right, of your room. Would a different order be more effective? Right, so think of the pieces of your essay are literally moving parts, and you should feel free to move them around. That would be another strategy. Third big step, double check, did you follow the assignment guidelines? Right, again, that's crucial. What is it specifically that your instructor has asked you to write about or to focus on? Also, again, this gets back to the person who's asked about thesis statements, right? Do you have a thesis statement? So here is, what is a thesis statement? Here are a couple ways to think about it. The sentence, or maybe 2, that clearly states your argument, the claim that you're making, the position that you are presenting. Remember that it's an argument. It's not a summary of something. Somebody should be able to debate your thesis. Also, another way to think about it is a spark note to your paper, right? So your paper should be contained, sort of the kernel, right, is your thesis statement. And it's an argument. So I should be able to argue with the thing that you're claiming, right? And if you can't argue with it, then that means that it's not a thesis, it's not a claim, it's not a specific argument. A couple strategies for those of you who struggle with having strong thesis statements. Take out a blank sheet of paper. In 1 to 2 sentences, put away all your notes. In 1 to 2 sentences, state your argument, state your position. If you can't do that, if you struggle to state your argument, then you need to go back to brainstorming. The reason to do it on a blank sheet of paper, right? Think of how fast we can type. Think of how it's like you don't even think when you're typing. Our fingers just move across the keys. Handwriting makes you slow down. Handwriting makes you focus on every word. Handwriting makes you think while you're writing, and people forget that that's an intimate connection between what it is you're thinking and your writing. There's a great quotation, I forget who says this, but it's composition is proof of clear thinking. So if you take out a blank sheet of paper, you should be able to handwrite in 1 or 2 sentences what is it that you're arguing. If you can't do that, you still need a thesis. Another strategy for thesis statements, ask a friend to read the first 2 paragraphs of your essay and underline your thesis. If your friend can't correctly identify your thesis, that means you don't have a clear one. This is especially useful with a friend who's not in your class, right? Because someone who hasn't read the story that you're writing on, or who hasn't read the book that you're working on, should still be able to identify what is this writer arguing, right? So do it with a friend. Next sort of major step, is your essay or is your paper report appropriately and effectively organized? So the person who wanted to think about organization. First thing you want to ask yourself, right, do you have a clear and fully developed introduction with the thesis statement? Does your paper have logically organized or arranged paragraphs? Again, think about every single paragraph should have one major claim. If you have your essay and you hold it up, you should be able to, next to each paragraph, could you write down the one thing that you focus on in that paragraph? What is the main idea of the paragraph? One way to think about it is, could you make a reverse outline? You have a draft of your essay, right? Could you go and then make an outline based on what you've done? And could you actually identify, again, each paragraph, one major point? Also remember, each paragraph, it has a claim, it has evidence, right? And a clear connection to your thesis. I should be able to tell from every paragraph, how does this connect back to your thesis? How does this support your argument? And remember that you as the writer, you're the expert, and you need to show the reader, right, why this is important, why this is significant. You are teaching the reader something. So it may seem obvious to you, it may seem self-evident to you, but to the person on the outside, right, it's not necessarily so obvious or evident. So make really clear, right, how each point connects to your thesis. Here's a strategy for paragraphs. Think of every single paragraph as a fence that holds together closely connected sentences. So one of my students asked me, like, when do you hit tab to make a new paragraph? And it took me forever to figure out what that student was asking, right? And the student didn't realize, like, there's actually a reason. You don't just, like, hit tab randomly to, like, indent a new paragraph, right? Literally, think of, in a paragraph, all the sentences should be connected, right? Focus on one idea. As soon as you move to a next topic or another example, that's a new paragraph. Another strategy, if you struggle with organization, so the person who wanted to think about organization, try highlighting. Go through your essay and highlight the main idea or the topic of every paragraph, and that can help you to visualize the logic of your paper, right? So if you have a whole document with highlights, does it make logical sense? Sort of, if you read just the highlighted portions, does that make logical sense? Can you highlight, right, one major idea for each paragraph? Especially for people who are visual learners, this is a good strategy. And obviously you can do it on your computer too. You can use colored font, you can use highlighter. Another strategy, so those of you who struggle with not having enough support, or if your instructor says you need more evidence, you need more support, same strategy. Try to highlight every time you have an example, or every time you have a quotation, every time you have textual support. Does each paragraph have highlighting? One sort of a good rule of thumb is that every paragraph should have one quotation or one piece of evidence. Right, so if you don't have a piece of evidence in every paragraph, then you sort of need to find more, right? You need more support for your thesis. So also along the lines of, right, organized essay, do you have a clear and fully developed conclusion? So what should a conclusion do? Remember, it's restating your thesis in different words. Also discussing the broader significance of your paper, the so what, right? Why does it matter? Why does your argument matter? Why should I care? I've just read, your 5-page essay. So what are the broader implications of what you're saying? What's the broader significance? So here's a strategy that is very revealing. So once you have your whole essay, read your introduction and then immediately read your conclusion. Skip over all the middle paragraphs. Are those two sections of your essay interchangeable? Right? Is it possible that you have a stronger thesis in your conclusion? And I can't tell you how many times when I meet like one-on-one with students, we look at the conclusion and there's a much stronger argument in the conclusion. So it's literally like the person has, through the process of writing, right, you clarify your thoughts, you arrive at what you want to say, and so you're much more clear in the conclusion. So when you revise your essay, sometimes literally, maybe your thesis is in your conclusion, and you need to move that up to the introduction. So it's a really good strategy to read conclusion and intro side by side. Remember too, like there's like a real reason, there's a function for the intro and there's a function for the conclusion. The function of the introduction is to outline a particular argument. The conclusion is to sum it up and to put it in a broader context. From reading your intro, I should know what I'm going to learn in your essay. From reading your conclusion, I should learn why it matters. Why is it significant? Again, like what are the bigger consequences? Point 5, so this is, we're moving, as you can see, right, from macro level to more micro level. So once you've worked through all of those sort of more organizational and conceptual level things, now you can reread for awkward or unclear or vague sentences. Reading aloud or under your breath is crucial. If you catch yourself rereading or if you catch yourself pausing, that is a really good indication, right, that you need to revise your sentences. Your voice never lies, right? So if anyone asks you to read a paper out loud and you say, wait, hold on a sec, that means it's not clear, right? So listen to your internal voice, right, as you're reading. If you stumble over words, if you like stutter as you're reading a sentence, that means it's not clear, and rewrite that sentence. Here's a strategy. Same thing, take out a blank sheet of paper. The sentence that you think is unclear, the sentence that's awkward, try rewriting it 3 different times, different ways. Literally the structure of the sentence, try writing a totally different structure of the sentence, and also try using really different words. And then think about which of those 3 sentences, which is more precise, which is more accurate, which is the best expression of your thought. Again, doing it on a blank sheet of paper and handwriting makes a huge difference. Another strategy, thinking in terms of sentence level revision. If you're stuck, if you like have an awkward sentence and you just can't fix it right, okay, try making it into 2 sentences. Try varying the length of your sentences, right? Short sentence, long sentences, medium sentences. That's also a way to enliven your writing, to make it more interesting. Also think about varying the beginning of your sentences, right? So if you went through and highlighted the first word of every sentence, how many sentences begin with the word this? Right, that gets incredibly boring and repetitive, right? This point, this blah, 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 this blah, blah, blah. So attend a little bit. How are you beginning your sentences? And vary the beginnings. That's another way to make your writing more lively. Finally, at the very end, right, this is when you have your argument, you have your organization, the very last thing you want to go back through for grammar, for spelling, for punctuation, for word choice. Very simple thing, right? Those easy to miss typos, right? The computer's not going to catch it and it, right? ITS and IT apostrophe S, right? IT apostrophe S means it is. There and there, THEIR, as in like persons, their belief, their feeling, versus THERE, there, as in that over there. Right? All of these things spell check doesn't check. So those are the things you have to really read carefully for. Finally, then, APA, Chicago, or MLA, I know everybody's asked, right, to write following a specific citation and document format. The Writing Center homepage has videos. So if you don't like sort of reading a book to find citation format, I would definitely look at the Writing Center website, right, because someone will walk you through the citation process. So if you like that interactive learning, that's a good way to learn citation style. So a couple things, changing gears a little. First, what we just did, right, is sort of laying out how can you walk through the basic revision process, what are some strategies for revising. One of the biggest challenges, I think, for students, or at least the students that I work with, is thinking of your revision, your new draft is an entirely different paper, right? So you need to sort of go back to the basics. Feel free to make radical revisions. Again, like maybe you're going to totally reorder your paragraphs. Maybe you need a totally new thesis. So revising is really working through the entire writing process again. Revision is what is revision, it's re-seeing. So I think it will be useful to go through some super basic writing tips. Right, so you're revising, this is the time to rethink, okay, what is writing? So thesis statements, once again, remember that a thesis makes a really specific argument. Thesis doesn't summarize something, it articulates a claim, right? It's not a summary, it's what you want to argue, what your interpretation. Someone else should be able to argue with it. The thesis, again, that's it. It articulates your claim, and the essay is the thing that supports it. If you're a math person, if you're a geometry person, what is a proof, right? A proof shows you the steps, how you arrive at something. That's what the essay does. It's like a proof. Introductions. Quote, question from an online person.
There's a question from Edwin. You're probably going to deal with this, but can the presenter provide strategies to present research or evidence in a variety of ways that is interesting in paragraphs?
Ways to present evidence in paragraphs in a way that is interesting, or different ways to present evidence?
A variety of ways that is interesting.
I think we're going to get there, but if we don't, he can speak up again. Okay, so here are a couple things. What should an introduction include? So you're revising your paper, go back, you could use this as a checklist for your introduction. Definitely introduction, right, should give relevant background information or context, right? What do I need to know as a reader to understand your essay? Maybe there's a key word that you need to define that I, as the reader, wouldn't understand, things like that. Definitely, introduction needs to have the title of the book, or the poem, or the essay that you're writing about, or the author. Right, so whatever your object of study is, the introduction should specify what that is. 1 to 2 sentence thesis statement, and then your intro should also give a roadmap for the rest of your essay, right? The introduction sort of tells the reader where you're going. If you are a formulaic person, if you like following charts, if you like having things really outlined, some people like to structure their introduction by saying, first, this essay will XYZ, next, it will blah, 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 finally, it will, et cetera, et cetera. So if you want to use that kind of language, that's one way of doing it, right? Laying out a roadmap from the very beginning. Like, this isn't like a spoiler alert thing. Your reader needs to know in advance, like, what is it that you're going to be talking about in the course of your essay. So here is an example. This was from a student paper last semester, and I tried to use colors to show you how this introduction works. So this is one long introduction. Many people have been to history class, sat through the long lectures, memorized dates of countless battles and historical events, and promptly forgot them as soon as class was over. It seems as if that is all history is sometimes, something to be aware of, but not to understand and connect with, and certainly not something that can affect people today. In contrast to this popular belief, every event in history has an impact on all people today, some more than others. Jonathan Lear analyzes this topic in his work, The Call of Another's Words. He discusses the lasting impact of the demise of the Native American Crow culture and how this event is not accurately depicted. Tim O'Brien wrestles with a similar topic in a chapter titled How to Tell a True War Story. O'Brien presents his thoughts on how to accurately describe war experiences in history and how those more accurate descriptions can greatly impact war veterans. Both of these writers feel that major events in history, especially cultural devastation and wars, have not been thoroughly recorded and understood. They both call for similar and effective solutions. Writing that incorporates emotion, poetry, and fiction can enhance our understanding of history and the struggles of people like the war veterans and Crows. So a couple things to notice, right? This would be an example of an effective introduction. In the green, Notice how this writer, it's really broad context, it's background. It's reflection on what is history, how do we normally experience it, right? So that's just general background. Next thing the writer does, she provides 2 examples from her primary text or objects of study, right? What she's going to focus on in his or her essay. So that's the sentences in red, right? She gives the author name and she gives a specific title of the work. And then finally, this author makes a really specific claim or an argument, right? That's the blue. This writer says both of these men, right, these writers, Jonathan Lear and Tim O'Brien, call for similar effective solutions. And second, writing that incorporates emotion, poetry, and fiction can enhance our understanding of history and the struggles of different groups of people. So someone could really argue with those sentences, right? I could say, no, I don't think those are effective solutions. I could say, no, I don't think that writing that incorporates poetry can help us understand history, right? That it's really clearly that's an argument that this person is making, and she's going to have to support that through textual examples and analysis, right? So this is a good thinking of how someone structures an instruction. You can also think of it as a upside down pyramid, right? With the base at the top, it's really wide in general, and then it gets more and more specific, and her thesis is at the very end. Okay, so conclusions. Again, thinking of these are basic writing tips. Conclusions, what should a conclusion do? Review what you argued in your essay. Reiterate your thesis in different words. It's really boring to just read someone's cut and paste thesis, right? Don't just take your thesis from the intro, copy it, and paste it in your introduction, right? That's boring. That's not really effective. You should know that, what your thesis is. Just reiterate in different words. Your conclusion should also address the broader significance, right? Why does it matter what you've just argued? Also, your conclusion might include questions that your argument raises, food for further thought. So a lot of students say, well, my high school teacher told me don't to include anything new in the conclusion, or don't raise any questions in the conclusion. Well, this is college level. You're writing more complex arguments. You're writing more nuanced arguments, right? Maybe your argument in your essay really does raise a further question. And by you introducing that in the conclusion, right, you're showing your reader that you're aware of the complexity, that you're not making a reductive argument, that you're aware of what your paper can address. And it's also, that's a good payoff for a reader, right? Like, I've read this whole essay, and now here's this bigger question that this essay is asking me to think about. So that's one way to do a conclusion that's not just like boring summary, right? That's what students are like, how can I make a conclusion that's not just repeating the same thing? What have you learned from what you've written? What are the bigger questions? How does your topic connect to society more generally, right? What are the broader implications of the thing you're arguing? So here's an example of a student's conclusion, again, from a class last semester. And it did the same kind of color coding. Writers often describe Ralph Waldo Emerson for his ability to move his readers emotionally through his words. The essay History is no exception to this. Throughout the essay, Emerson challenges the concept of history. He does this specifically by redefining history as we know it, describing the shortcomings of history, and by suggesting that in order to connect the individual to the universal history that connects all of humankind's thoughts, emotion, and actions, we must look at art and poetry as examples of how to form a deep emotional connection with different time periods. Through Emerson's analysis of the shortcomings of history as we typically know it, we begin to ask a more profound question. Are we doomed to repeat failures of the past because of our inability to relate current events to those of generations prior? So again, if you're looking at the color coding, right, first thing the writer summarizes his topic in general. This is essay about Ralph Waldo Emerson, how he moves readers, and about how his essay History does this. In blue, that's the person reiterating his or her thesis, right? Throughout the essay History, Emerson challenges the concept of history. He does this by X, Y, Z things. That's what this author has spent the whole time arguing. In red, here's the much broader significance of the argument, right? The so what, the bigger implications. And this person literally says, right, now that we've analyzed Emerson and how he asks us to rethink history, it's raising a bigger question, right? If we can't connect current events to events in history, are we doomed to just repeat history? It's a good example of effective use of a question in a conclusion, moving beyond just summary. So after these are the last three things I had on the PowerPoint: thesis statements, introductions, and conclusions. On your handout, and I think I can pull that up here. Where it is? This one. So here's some more technical level type revisions. Pronouns with vague reference. So he, she, they, this, it, right? Be sure those are all pronouns. Be sure your reader knows what those pronouns refer to, right? So who is he? Who is she? What is it? Here are a couple examples. Instead of he, Smith, give the name. Instead of they, say athletes, right? Instead of use the scientific method rather than it. When using the word this to begin a sentence, well, everybody does that, right? And it's like, this what? What are you referring to? What do you mean, right? Is it this theory? Is it this perspective? Is it this question, right? So anytime you begin a sentence with this, it should be followed by what this is, right? Crucial one. Another big revision point for revision: active constructions or active voice rather than passive voice. This is not just like a silly little rule to follow, right? This passive constructions deflect the subject of your sentence. It makes it harder for the reader to understand what the subject of your sentence is. So here's an example of a passive construction. The symbolism of the veil will be examined in this essay. So how would you revise that to active? This essay will examine the symbolism of the veil. Think about a subject as an agent, right? Something that does something. So this essay will, this person will, something that's doing an action. Here's another good example. Lots of people use sentences. The psychological consequences are shown by Robinson when he says. Again, passive construction, if you revise it to active, Robinson shows the psychological consequences when he says, right? Robinson is the person, he's doing the action. That is an active construction. Another strategy for passive and active, go through your essay, and someone made me do this in this is maybe the most useful writing strategy I learned when I was in college. Someone made me go through my entire essay and take out every time I use the word is, take it out. And it forces you to rewrite in active voice. You really don't, is this a to be verb, right? Be, am, is, are, take is out and use a specific verb, right? You can even go back to these. The psychological consequences are shown by Robinson when he says, take out are, what do you have to do? You have to say, Robinson shows the psychological consequences. So literally, and if you were to highlight one of your essays right now, think of how many times you've used that word is. And if you rewrote it and took out the is, you would almost guarantee you would be writing in active voice. Another thing to do, so this is for the person who mentioned thesis statements. Make sure that you're developing an argument rather than listing points. So here's a big one. If you go through your essay and if a lot of your sentences begin with words like also or another point that such and so person makes, that's a good indication that you're just listing a lot of points rather than developing an argument. Right, so again, attention to how you're beginning sentences, that can reveal a lot. Introducing quotations, so those of you who transitions, this is part of transitions, definitely for table 8. Introducing quotations with signal phrases. So when you're weaving in outside evidence into your essay, right, how do you introduce that, right? You use a signal phrase. In Brown's account, according to Smith, as Hawthorne explains it in Anderson's words. Signal phrases, that's how you get flow. When people say like, oh, my writing doesn't really flow. Signal phrases help to create flow in your writing, right? Like it leads readers from one point to the next. Signal phrases also identify for the reader the source of the quotation. Right? I need to know where that quotation is coming from, who is saying this, right? So that's why a signal phrase is crucial. Also, finally, a signal phrase can do work to help you make an argument. For example, In Hawthorne's informative account, then you give a quotation. That word informative, right, it tells the reader that this is an informative account that Hawthorne is offering, rather than I could substitute, I don't know, in Hawthorne's difficult and confusing account, that makes it totally changes it, right? And it's my opinion, it's my interpretation, it's helping me to make an argument. So again, signal phrases. Here are a couple different examples of signal phrases. And these are all listed as examples. As American philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson states, life is our dictionary. According to Ralph Waldo Emerson, life is our dictionary. Emerson offers a different perspective when he claims life is our dictionary. If you want to vary your sentence structure, if you want to make your writing more active, think about putting your signal phrase in the middle of a quotation. So life, insists Ralph Waldo Emerson, is our dictionary, right? So that changes up the whole rhythm of the sentence, right? You still have a signal phrase, you still have the author's name, so the reader knows, but it's just a different rhythm, a different feel. Here are a couple other transition sentences or transition phrases to create flow in your prose. So once again, I'll use the same example. Emerson says life is our dictionary. Life, in other words, teaches the meaning of things. That is, the best dictionary is life itself, which is to say, life experiences are the sources of knowledge. Put differently, we receive instruction from lived experience. More specifically, we gain knowledge from the process of living. In effect, Emerson seems to suggest that experience is an invaluable guide. So all of those underlined sentences or all those underlined phrases, those are transition phrases. Right? That's like helping readers to follow what it is you're thinking, the point that you're making. The person who asked on table 4, the person who asked about how do I expand on things, here would be a good example. So you have the quotation, Emerson says life is our dictionary, right? Rather than just letting that stand on its own, take a minute to unpack it. What does that mean? So notice all the different variations of sentences underneath, right, where I gave the examples of transition phrases. All those say really different things, right? So that's why it's crucial for you as a writer to unpack, analyze, flesh out, right, what your textual examples mean. It's getting back to the idea that you are an expert. You need to show the reader what's important. You need to show the reader what to pay attention to. So that would be, even its simple forward quotation, life is our dictionary. You can interpret that a lot of different ways. So take the time to do it in your writing. These are my favorites. So awkward, vague, and unclear sentences. Reading your work aloud can help you to identify the awkward sentences. And then here again is that strategy. When rewriting awkward, unclear sentences, take out your blank sheet of paper. Rewrite it 3 different ways, radically different ways. And again, sometimes it's easier to figure out what you're trying to say through the process of writing. So how many of you have been to a faculty member's office and you're talking, right, and you're like, oh yeah, like that's much better, or you say it in a much more clearly than when writing. It's the same process that's going on in your head, right, when you're thinking, but it's just a matter of getting it onto the paper. So again, that idea that thinking, that's what writing is, and you just got to slow yourself down enough to get it onto the page. So for the last bit of the workshop, I have a couple really specific revision exercises that we could do, and then there'll be some time for questions. So I'm going to call on people, so get ready. This is page 3 of the handout. Most of these are pretty simple reviews, so I think you'll be able to get these. So first, under the heading 1, thesis statements. I'm going to write, so someone give me the name of a character and someone give me a movie. Name of a character and movie. Doesn't matter. Who's a character in a movie? You got to know the movie pretty well because you got to be able to make an argument about it.
Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump. Okay, so I'm going to write about the character Forrest. Life is like a box of chocolates. I'm going to write about the character Forrest from the movie Forrest Gump. Okay, so you could fill that in. And now I need a female character from an adventure movie. Female character from an adventure movie.
Laura Croft.
Laura Croft?
Laura. Tomb Raider.
Oh, Laura Croft, Tomb Raider. Okay, Laura Croft. Okay, so thesis statement A, I'm going to write about the character Forrest from the movie Forrest Gump. Thesis statement B, Laura Croft demonstrates several important virtues in her adventures. Okay, so why are these ineffective thesis statements? These are not strong thesis statements. Starting with thesis statement A, what would you say? Why is this not a particularly effective thesis statement?
You use
So try to avoid the personal I, right? Use it sparingly. I know you'll get lots of different opinions from different people. That personal I, you don't really need it, right? You're the writer. We know you're thinking. You're the person who's writing. Take out the I. Else every once in a while, strategically, it might be really effective, but usually not. What else about that thesis statement A? Why is it not a very effective thesis?
There's no real argument to be made.
There's no real argument, right? Someone over here was about to say something.
Yeah, Kelly, online, it did not make an argument about anything.
It did not make an argument about anything. So basically, table 3 and Callie made the same, right? This is just like, I'm going to write about something, right? It's not making an argument. So you could write that, right, under the why are these ineffective? Sentence A does not make an actual argument. Okay, so what about B? Laura Croft demonstrates several important virtues in her adventures. Another not very effective thesis. Yes. Doesn't necessarily give any evidence of it, or doesn't specify what the virtues are, do you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so it says Laura Croft demonstrates several important virtues in her adventures. But like, what virtues or how? Anything else? What else would you say about B? Why is it not very effective? Nice. So it doesn't really make a claim why those virtues are important. So I think what both table 2 and table 8, you guys are both getting at, this is not a very specific thesis. It's very, very general. And it doesn't list virtues, and it also doesn't have anything like, why does this matter? Why do we care? Why is this important? So if you were to flip over to the next page, I think it's on your next page. So here's your revision task. Try revising these sentences in order to make them more effective. So I'll give you a couple minutes to do this. It shouldn't take too long. I'm curious what people come up with. So try revising A and B. It's okay if you don't know the movie, you can just make some up. So again, this is on page 4 at the top, revising those thesis statements. How to be creative, number 1. Okay, so any brave souls who rewrote thesis statement A want to offer their revision? Anyone feel like they have a good revision for A? Yes, table 5.
Forrest Gump is an important character because he is very relatable to people.
Forrest Gump is an important character because he is very relatable to people. So close. That's an excellent working thesis on the way there. How would you add to that thesis or make it even sharper, even more significant? And anyone can chime in. Forrest Gump is important because he is very relatable. What does relatable mean?
As in experiencing life events like a lot of people do.
Nice. So that is much more specific than relatable. So Forrest Gump is an important character because he experiences life experiences that many other individuals also experience, something like that, or he undergoes or he suffers life experiences that many other individuals also experience. So that, the word relatable, so my colleagues and I always joke about that word because students use it so much, right? They say, oh, this character is so relatable. Remember, the word relatable, we think you're using it to mean like, I can identify with this character, I understand what he or she's going through, right? Remember, the word relatable also means tellable, right? Something, I can relate something to you. This is relatable, meaning this is tellable. So when you say this book is relatable, what exactly do you mean? Do you mean that you identify with the characters? Do you mean the characters' experiences, you can understand them? Do you mean that you empathize with the character? Right, so that's a great, table 5, great example of the beginnings of a thesis and then how you could make it even more specific, right? What do you mean by relatable? And why is it important? You said Forrest Gump is important because he lives through experiences that many other people live through, right? You could even sharpen that thesis more by saying Forrest Gump teaches us lessons about, I don't know, moral life because we watch him or we see him experience life events that we also experience, something like that. I'm curious also other versions of rewrites of thesis A. Anyone else happy with their rewrite? Yeah.
Forrest Gump's character in the movie Forrest Gump holds true throughout his life by never wavering with trials and tribulations such as war and love like his life.
Okay, so I don't even know if I can repeat it back because it's so specific, right? But notice that thesis statement had the character Forrest Gump in the movie Forrest Gump, so author and or the character and movie title. And can you read it one more time?
Yeah. Forrest Gump's character in the movie Forrest Gump holds true throughout his life by never wavering when trials or tribulations such as love and war plague his life.
Holds true throughout his life, even when trials and tribulations such as love and war, right? So it's too specific. You know this essay is going to talk about love and war. You know this essay is going to talk about trials and tribulations, right? So a really specific thing, and I could also argue with it, right? I could say, no, he doesn't hold true to these things, or I could say war doesn't matter in this movie so much as you make it out to, right? And I agree with you, but again, like someone could argue with it. So nice. What about B? I think this would have to be someone who actually knows the movie Lara Croft Tomb Raider, but anyone happy with their revision of B, thesis statement B? Lara Croft. Hey, you guys suggested Lara Croft. Help us out here.
Alright, it said Lara Croft displays many important virtues of a true hero in her quest of the movie Tomb Raider.
So Lara Croft, and it was active voice, which is excellent. Lara Croft displays, right?
Many important virtues.
Many important virtues of a true hero in the movie Tomb Raider. So the one revision would be many important virtues of a true hero, such as, then fill in the blanks, right? Because there could be many. You want to argue about what virtues, what the virtues are of a true hero. Nice. And then the whole thesis or the whole essay, right, focuses on proving how she displays those virtues. Anyone else have had an idea or revision for that sentence? The Lara Croft one.
We've got a couple.
Yeah, give us an online one.
Okay.
Callie said Laura Croft demonstrates several important virtues in her adventures as an archaeologist, but most significant is her role as a female protagonist.
Interesting. So this person, it's a 2-sentence thesis, And notice how this person has chosen to focus on what's most important about this character is her role as a female protagonist. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Nice. So that's the thing that this writer is going to have to prove. Okay, so here are a couple other different examples. Now I'm asking you to identify what makes a thesis statement really effective. So this is Roman numeral 2, examples of effective thesis statements. So A, Tim O'Brien's contradictions throughout his chapter, How to Tell a True War Story, teach readers how to understand a true war story. These are actually student sentences. So what makes that, would you say, what makes that one effective? Some qualities, some strengths that you notice in that sentence. Active, written in active voice, yeah?
I was going to say active construction.
Excellent, active construction. Tim O'Brien's contradictions. Teach readers how to understand a true war story. Anything else that you would write down for why this is effective? Yeah.
Word teach.
Teach. So it's making a claim that this story is teaching something very specific, right? That's a good basis for an argument, right? Because we could argue about what the story teaches. Anything else you notice?
Like you can argue that it doesn't teach you something.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. You can, it's debatable. So the fact that someone could argue with it makes it, again, an argument. And notice too how this person isn't just saying the story teaches readers how to understand a war story. This person is arguing specifically that Tim O'Brien's contradictions, that aspect of the story is what teaches us something. So that's even more specific, right? It's not just that the story teaches us something, it's how he uses contradictions in the story to teach us something. Same sort of thing for B. The nameless narrator in Sherwood Anderson's The Man in the Brown Coat offers insight into the isolation at the core of every human existence and asks if a profound self-examination can provide a remedy. Things that stand out to you as being really effective in this thesis. Same things, one could argue with it. It includes the author's name, it includes the short story. So when do you put a short story, what do you use to indicate, so do you use quotations or italics for a book title? This is MLA 8. Book title, do you use quotation marks or do you use italics? Italics. Short story, what do you use? Quotations. Poem, what do you use? Quotations. A journal, the title of a journal. You use italics, quotation marks, italics. Nice, you guys are doing well. Notice too, so this is one thing you could mark on your paper. Notice how this thesis statement makes two very specific claims. So, nameless narrator in Sherwood Anderson's Man in the Brown Coat. One claim offers insight into the isolation at the core of every human existence. So if you underline that, right, that is a claim, that is an argument that the story is giving us insight into isolation. Second claim that this thesis makes, and asks if a profound self-examination can provide a remedy. So this person has to prove both of those things in his or her essay, right? And this is a longer essay. This is going to take like 5 to 8 pages to prove this, right? But again, this is a good example of something that's really specific. And it's two very distinct claims. So last 3 revision exercises, just to get in the habit of revising sentences. So take, I don't know, 1 minute, 30 seconds even, to revise that first sentence. This is expanded on by Dr. Smith when he says, only should take you like 30 seconds or less. This is expanded on by Dr. Smith when he says. How would you revise that? Okay, that should pretty much be all. What is it? Super easy. Revising from passive to active, how do you do it?
Dr. Smith expands this point when he says.
Dr. Smith expands this point when he says. So again, think too, a lot of times for the revising for active voice, simply put the end of the sentence first, right? The subject first. Dr. Smith is doing the action. Second sentence. And so once again, that revision would be Dr. Smith expands on this point when he says. Second sentence, 30 seconds to revise. One of the immediate problems Edna is presented with is that of her father. Lots of things going on here, so it requires quite a bit of revision. Okay, anybody have a suggestion? Things you could do to revise this sentence? Not as easy of a fix. So one way you could do it, an immediate problem Edna faces is her father. That would be one possibility. You could also do something like one of the immediate problems Edna confronts is the abusiveness of her father, right? So that, like, this is another example, like a sentence that's kind of vague, right? Like, what do you mean by the problem that she's presented with is that of her father? What exactly does that mean, right? Is his dominance? Is it his abusiveness? Is it like, what is it about the father? And then also revising for active, right? Edna faces this problem, say what it is. Edna confronts this problem. Edna wrestles with this problem. Last sentence, and I want to make sure you guys have time to fill out your little cards. So I will just tell you the two major things that you would want to mark for this last sentence, right? Introduce the quotation. Notice how we have no idea who this is saying this. So the lecture argues that we learn from experience. Life is our dictionary. The lecture also says we need to think critically about what we learn. So first thing, you need to introduce the quotation. Lecture argues that we learn from experience. According to Ralph Waldo Emerson, life is our dictionary. You also need a citation. Notice there's no page number here. That would be the second thing that you would have to do to revise the sentence. So introduce quotation is 1. 2, citation for that quotation. 3 would be analyze that quotation, right? Unpack it, say why it's important. Notice how this writer immediately goes on to another point by saying the lecture also says. But here's that exact example of, wait, hold on a second, like, why is this important? What does it mean to say that life is our dictionary? You could spend 4 sentences further talking about what that means, right? So the 3 big revisions for that last sentence: introduce quotation, provide citation, and unpack or analyze the quotation. So questions, lingering questions, things that people have. I think also your little cards are coming around for you guys to fill out, but I'm happy to come around and talk to you one-on-one also. So maybe just if you have a specific question that we didn't address, just raise your hand and I can come talk to you. I don't know if that person's question.
So you can just speak if anyone is asking this question. Would thesis statements or strategies you mentioned be written any different if it was for a science research paper? Yeah. For example, if you're writing a literature review, set the stage for a research project that one is going to be examining.
A literature review is a different genre.
If that's what you're actually speaking into.
So a literature review is kind of a different genre than an essay, an argumentative essay, and likely the person who is assigning that literature review is going to give you a specific sort of handout or form for what he or she wants you to follow. But a lot of the technical level things that we discussed today would still hold true for a literature review. So introducing the authors, introducing the texts, integrating quotations into your prose, all of those things would stay the same. You can type in if you have other questions. I don't know if that answers what you wanted to know. A literature review, also remember, is you summarizing and accounting for the literature that you've read, not so much you making an argument. Why are you going back to that?
Oh, because it had our old hours for the writing.
Oh,
Which your hours.
good thing that changed that. Crossed my mind vaguely at like 9:30 last night. I was like, I gotta give this to Michelle. I'm like, go on in it.
Right.
We'll find out this hour.
He said thank you. If there are any other questions. Once you're done filling out the survey cards, comment cards, you can bring them up here. Leave them with me. Liz is a whiz. I'm so lucky to have her.
No, it's gonna happen next year.
I'm spoiled rotten. I don't know what I'm gonna do when I get somebody next to me that doesn't know anything. Thank you.
Yeah, oh, promotion.
Perfect. Technically, I'm a graduate student now.
So
I
why?
haven't graduated. So a question from Edwin. Right here, I can take it. Just a drop.
Thank you.
And, yep, I'll just move this right over here. Can you see it from there?
I see, thank, yeah.
Okay, so you can just speak, you don't have to
Okay.
type anything. Thank you.
Okay, so Edwin, I'm not totally sure what exactly your assignment is, like if it's just a literature review or if your literature review is part of a proposal for a research project. But if you need to make an argument for your research project, then yes, absolutely, you will need a thesis, right? What is your project about? What's your research question? If it's a science research project, right, I'm almost positive that you're going to need to have what is the research question that you're pursuing. And yeah, definitely, I'm looking again at your question, to justify why you're doing the research project. Yeah, like why are you doing that project? What do you expect to find? Nice. You're welcome, Edwin. Good luck with your work.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think that was it.
Yep.
Okay.
Writing an archival paper about the pure Norwegian acts as the censor, but I can't seem to find the sources and things like. And I also have to make a thesis statement. I mean, why do I need a thesis statement for the history?
Ah, yes, definitely. That's so you're making an argument about how you interpret it, a lot of important. So then that's something that people can do. You need